So if you are at this point, you're ready to make a monster. You get to make a lot of the choices in this task. So we have shown you alleles to use. For eyes, you're using big E and little e, but we haven't told you the phenotype that you get to use. So you get to choose. Do you want to make eyes like, sure, you could do something like blue eyes are dominant and purple eyes are recessive, or you could say having like 5 eyes is dominant and 1 eye is recessive, or stalk eyes, like eyes out on stalks are dominant and eyes flat on your head are recessive. You get to decide what the 2 phenotypes are. So you're choosing 2 different phenotypes. Like maybe you're gonna say 1 eye is dominant and 4 eyes are recessive. So your monsters either have 1 eye or 4 eyes. If they have at least 1 dominant trait, or dominant allele, they're gonna show the dominant trait. Regardless, you get to decide what traits you want to have. Ears, pick what kind of ear traits you want to have. Do you want to have like round ears versus pointy ears? Do you want to have 7 ears versus 1 ear? Whatever kind of shape or design or whatever, you decide what your phenotypes are for ears. You decide what your 2 possible nose phenotypes are. You decide what your 2 possible mouth phenotypes are, what your 2 possible fur phenotypes are, and what your 2 possible feet phenotypes are. So you have to get a little creative and think about what traits you want your monster to have. Then you get to decide their genotype. So you can decide if you want them to be big E, little e, or little e for eyes. Remember, for eyes you're using E's, for ears you're using R's, for nose you're using N's, for mouth you're using M, for fur you're using F, and for feet you're using A, just from up here. Now, if you want to flip a coin to get your genotypes like we did for your snowmen, you sure can. You don't have to, but that's an option. So you can just decide. If you decide, well, I want to have a heterozygous one-eyed monster, or whatever your traits are, then you would put that in here. Phenotype then, well, if I'm big E, little e, then I'm going to have 1 eye. Is that dominant or a recessive trait? Well, it's dominant because I have at least 1 capital letter, so I showed the dominant trait. So I'm going to write a D there for dominant versus an R for recessive. I decided to make mine heterozygous, so I write an HT for heterozygous instead of an HM for homozygous. Mine is a hybrid because I have 1 of each. You may or may not. Probability of passing on a recessive allele? Well, I've got 1 of each, so I've got a 50% chance of passing on the recessive, 50% chance of passing on the dominant allele. Then I go through and do the same thing for ears, nose, mouth, fur, feet. Remember, you get to make a lot of decisions, which is kind of fun. Then you're going to draw your monster's portrait down here, use color. Add facts like the name of your monster, how old is your monster, when's their birth date, when's their favorite color, what's their favorite color rather, what's their favorite school appropriate saying. So have fun practicing your genetics and drawing or creating, then drawing your monster. Remember, get creative up here, decide what you want your monster to have, and have fun.